been emotions in his research here. He's a colleague here from KIT in Karlsruhe. And we'll see then later on some more institutional insights to the topics. But we start this time with the only practical insight, and we are very happy to have one of the biggest cities here in Germany with Hamburg and one of the biggest planning ministries for transport mobility with Oliver Maus. Thank you very much for joining us. He will give us an insight to the inner city development of Hamburg. So you see the title, Towards a Car Reduced Inner City. And the engagement of the city in this direction. So this is our starter for today for one of those insights. Next time we will have probably more of those best practice again. And so I hand over now to Oliver. The floor is yours. Thank you very much for coming and accepting our invitation.
Yeah, thanks, Markus. Thanks for the invitation and the introduction. I hope you can see my screen now.
Yeah, we see
it. Work. Okay. Yeah, the name of my title is Towards a Car Reduced Inner City. We started our redesigning process of the inner city 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, the title would have been Towards a Car-Free Inner City. But we changed this because for our discussion with the stakeholders, it's much more better to call it a car-reduced inner city. It's not possible to achieve a car-free city. 5 years ago, we developed an inner city concept, and there were several concepts before, but it was the first concept we brought into realization. And like a booster, we had a new government by the Green and Red Party 5 years ago. And you can see a map of our inner city concept to give you a bit of orientation. We have the central station in the east of our inner city, the town hall in the middle, and south of the inner city is the Hafen city. And what is the biggest challenge? We have two big roads crossing the inner city, the Willy Brandt-Straße with up to 60,000 cars per day, and the Ring Road with up to 25 or 30,000 cars per day. And this is quite a challenge we have to cope with. And the 5 major goals of our concept we developed 5 years ago is to coming more from a perspective of the pedestrians, to create more and new road sections, to achieve a better accessibility by sustainable transport modes, to create more and livable public spaces. We want a brighter variety of mixed uses, and we want more housing in the inner city. We just have 1,000 inhabitants in the inner city so far. And we want the common development with the stakeholders, and we want citizen participation. These are our major goals behind our concept. And we were far away from a car-reduced inner city 5 years ago. This is our traffic routing plan for private cars, and everywhere you can see a pink line. These areas of our inner city were accessible by private cars 5 years ago. So we had not so many pedestrian zones and not so many roads closed down for cars. And this was the most reason to create this inner city concept, and it changed step by step during the last years. So this is the same plan, but you can see that we closed down, for example, the Jungfernstieg, which is a famous boulevard in the heart of the city for cars. We created more pedestrian zones, like in the Rathausquartier near to the town hall, or in the Kontorhaus district, which is close to our main shopping street, Mönckebergstraße. And in the next years, more projects will be realized where we close down roads for the private cars. The first pilot project, which is very famous, is the Jungfernstieg, which is here at the water. And the Jungfernstieg looked 5 years ago like this, a 4-lane road, a major road with up to 30,000 cars per day and a speed limit of 50 kilometers per hour. And it was very difficult to cross the road for pedestrians. And we said, this is our pilot project. And just a few months after we published our inner city concept, we realized temporary measures to change the Jungfernstieg like this. We created a middle island with green elements. We closed down the road for private cars, so just dedicated to, by law, dedicated to public transport, taxis and cyclists. And this was 5 years ago, and I'll give you some pictures how it looked like in reality with these green elements on the middle island. And after that, we started a planning process. And in May, we will finish our construction work, and the Jungfernstieg will look like this, with much more green elements, with a narrowing road, a lane reduction from 16 to 11 meters. So it's possible for pedestrians to cross it at wherever they want to. We have new furniture, we have more space for outdoor dining. We have more green, and we have more child-friendly elements, which was very important for our stakeholders, like this. I don't know if it's the right translation, like a fork field, which is located here, and which give the Jungfernstieg much more attractiveness also for families. A second project, and it's also a major road like the Jungfernstieg, is the Steinstraße. This is the Steinstraße, the first mentioned road in Hamburg. It's a parallel road to the Mönckebergstraße, the main shopping street. And 100 years ago, the Steinstraße looked like this, a very busy promenade. And until 2021, the Steinstraße was a 4-lane major road with up to 70,000 cars per day, and a big boundary between the core of our inner city and the new districts in the south, especially the Hafen city. And we wanted to change this, and we were a bit lucky because in 2021 we had to move all buses from the parallel road, the Mönckebergstraße, to the Steinstraße because of construction works at the underground. And we needed space for these buses, and we created 2 bus lanes and pop-up bike lanes, and we changed the Steinstraße to a one-way road for cars. And we had a decrease of cars from 70,000 to 8,000 cars per day. And after that, we started a planning process, which was finished just a few weeks ago. And in 2026 or 2027, the road will look like this. So it's a completely new road section with a lane reduction from 16 to 6.5 meters. It's just dedicated, again, like the Jungfernstieg, to public transport, to cyclists, and to taxis. We have 2 rows of trees, so it's transforming to like a city avenue. We have more green elements, we have more place for delivery parking, so it will be a completely different character from it was in 2021. So these were 2 projects on major roads, and we also have 2 projects in districts. The one is the Kontorhaus district, which is a World Heritage Site and looks like this. And the center of this district is now used as a car park with 150 cars. And the visualization for the future in 2025 or 2026 looks like this. So we will close down the car park. We will change it to pedestrian soon with rising bollards at the end or at the edge of this square, which are very expensive. So rising bollards, I don't know, it's about 120,000 euro per bollard. So it's a very expensive project, but for us, it's the only possibility to avoid traffic on the new square. The second district project is a Rathausquartier, a district close to the town hall, which is here. And This is a collaboration project from the stakeholders, from the Business Improvement District and the government. And 2 years ago, it's a typical neighboring road with on street parking on both sides, not so much dining space. And this is the first project we finished a few weeks ago, and it's nearly the same perspective. And now it looked like this. When I go back, can see we have a new pavement, we have more outdoor dining space, we have changed the road into a pedestrian zone. And we're looking forward to spring when there's much more life on the street. A bit of a problem is here that within the planning process, they decided not to use rising bollards. And during the first weeks, we saw that there is many traffic, delivery traffic, and other private cars who just drive through the pedestrian zone, though maybe it's necessary to build rising bollards within the next few months to avoid this situation. Behind all these projects, we have a transport model and a transport feasibility check. This is our forecast for 2030. And everywhere where you see green areas, there we have decreased cars. This is especially around and within the inner city. Just a few red lines, which means there we have more buses, but we have decreasing traffic volumes of private cars. And this is a very strong argument for us to say, okay, these projects are feasible. We can close down the Jungfernstieg, we can close down the Steinstraße, we can create more pedestrian zones because our forecast says this is feasible. But we have a challenge when we look south of the inner city to the Hafen City, because the urban development in the Hafen City isn't finished yet. We will have a very big shopping center, which will open in April. The expectation is that they will have up to 50,000 visitors per day. And in traffic volumes, that means we have up to 20,000 cars more per day. So our goal is to better connect the inner city with the Hafen City, but we have to cope with these increasing traffic volumes during the Hafen City, which is just accessible by 5 bridges. So this is very tricky and will be a big challenge because we want to have better connections for pedestrians, for cyclists, but we know that we have also increasing traffic volumes. We also work on an update for our inner city concept. For agenda for the next 5 years, and we will focus on these axes between the Hafen City and the south and the inner city, which is called the Dome axis and the Rödingsmarkt axis, two connections who are dominated by private cars and less bicycle infrastructure and less space for pedestrians. And we also identified more districts like the Gertrudenviertel, which is here near to the Alster, and the Kolonnaden, which is another district, which also should become better pedestrian zones and more quality of life. So our first lessons learned after 5 years, what was very important for our process is the early integration of all ministries, also climate, economy, urban development. All these ministries are behind our concepts, and if it's possible, we always try to organize our political backing, which is on a superior level very easy because the Green and the Red party stands behind our concept. When we are on a local level, we have another situation because it's dominated by the Black, the Red, and the Yellow party. So we every 3 or 4 months we are in the committees of the local level to explain our plans, to explain our projects, which is very important for the process. We are in permanent discussions with the stakeholders, with the owners, with the chambers of commerce or handicrafts, and with the retail business, because as you can imagine, it's a really a tricky discussion with the retail business when we reduce on street parking, and the retail business says this will damage and have an impact on our business. We offer different forms of citizen participation. We started in 2020 during the pandemic. So in the first 2 years, we concentrated on online participation, but during the last 3 years, we changed this and had different forms of events and meetings to let the stakeholders or the citizens participate in our process. It's really important to have these evidence-based discussions, like I pointed out, this feasibility study, and also statistics, how the traffic volume develops. What was also a key factor are good visualizations of our plans and ideas, especially when we go to committees of the local authorities. It's always helpful to use these visualizations, how the new quality of the projects could be. And our important message is to be patient and go ahead step by step. So we changed the Jungfernstieg 5 years ago, and this was a pilot project and had a good impact on the next projects we will realize in the coming years. So this is a quick insight in our process, and isn't finished yet, but it's worthwhile to come to Hamburg and see how it looked like. The Jungfernstieg will finish, like I said, in May. And thanks for your attention, and I'm ready for questions.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. If we have any questions from the audience, please feel free to ask directly. Switch on your micro. Yeah, Sonja.
Yes, thank you, Oliver. It was super interesting and super impressive as well. I will be interested to hear how have you managed to decrease the traffic, the car traffic? I mean, you have done restrictions. So is it only that it's not pleasant to drive anymore, or have you done some, let's say, other kind of measurements or measures to attract people out of their cars to use public transport or other modes of mobility?
Yeah, I think it's both. It's a mixture of push and pull factors. So the major goal of our government is to achieve 80% of sustainable transport modes in the model split until 2030. Now we have, I don't know, 70 to 30 of private cars. So on the one hand, we have these projects, we close down roads for private cars. And on the other hand, we have a better offer of public transport. We have more buses, we have MOIA, we have a sharing offer in the inner city. We have better cycling infrastructure. The volume of cyclings is increasing during the last years. So this is a combination of different measures, which isn't finished yet. We will build a new underground in the next years. We will build new metro stations, new metro lines. So it's both.
Yeah, Laura, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. I have a question about, you showed a picture of the traffic routing plan that you did. Is this mainly for the city to work with, or is the traffic routing plan also communicated to service providers like Google or TomTom, so that they also show the desired routing established by the city? Do you know? Do you work with them?
No, we don't work with them. It's for our internal discussions between the several ministries, and it's also for our discussions with the stakeholders. So like a proof. Look at our maps. Look at our results. This is how the traffic volume will develop. But so far there's no collaboration with Google or other institutions like that.
And would that be interesting? Like it's something that has been considered to also help the users to take the desired like routes as established by the cities, or not yet?
We are now working on an actualization of this transport model, make some adjustments because we had the pandemic and the traffic volume went down, and now it's increasing a bit. So we don't know where it will end, and I think the first step will be to adjust our forecast and adjust our transport model. But yes, good idea. After that, why not going to in collaboration?
But just because I was talking, I mean, just so that I was talking at the very beginning that you have like the traffic routing plan. It said like that on the slide 2 or 3, I don't know, that you showed like the desired directions for the cars and the zones for buses and bicycles. I was asking about that one.
Ah, that one. Okay. This is something we provide Google with. So when we finished the Rathausquartier, which is here, and the new 2 pedestrian zones, this is something we announced at Google. So that Google Maps doesn't route any private cars through the Rathausquartier. Yeah, indeed.
Thank you.
I think Peter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I am allowed to ask once. Thank you, Oliver. It's perfect. It's brilliant and it looks very good. I only know from other cities the photo shop stuff to see what could happen in future. And here you see what happened right now. And just want to ask if you have any response from the local retailer after the rebuilding of the streets. Are they satisfied that they have more customers, or is there not a round of questionnaire right now for getting this impression from the retailers?
Yeah, I think you have to distinguish. The first project we finished is the Rathausquartier, and the retailers of the Rathausquartier are very happy with the situation so far. I think when spring comes and better weather, it's much more better for them. In the Steinstraße, we have a big discussion with the retailers because it's closed down for cars, and it was a major road and a connection between the eastern and the western part of the city. That was a bit tricky, and some retailers said we have to move from the Steinstraße to another place. We work on solutions. For example, in the Steinstraße, we will make it possible that delivery traffic is possible the whole day. In other streets in the inner city, we have the commitment that delivery traffic is just possible between 9 p.m. and 11 a.m. So we're working on concrete solutions to make them satisfied, or to like Wempe in the Steinstraße, which is a famous company, pays a lot of taxes, so it's very important to find solutions with such companies.
Thank you. Yeah, I just get an impression because it's always a discussion between in every city, close the street. The retailers are complaining, but there are a lot of good studies where it works, and yes, and lessons learned are very, very welcome to say, hey, it works after 1 year or after 2 years if you adapt a little bit.
Yeah,
okay.
But often we are more in contact with the owners of the buildings and not with the retailers, and that's a discussion which is mostly more about private car than their importance.
Okay, thank you, Oliver.
Okay, thank you. If there are not any more questions, we jump forward as we have a lot of speakers today. Thank you very much again, Oliver, for your intervention, your impressive insights to Hamburg development. I hand now over to Sonja. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Sonja is one of the early inventors of mobility as a service. She's a transport engineer and from Aalto University. And she currently works at PostNord. So she's also a consultant and gives us an insight to mobility as a service from a perspective, probably perspectives of what has been done already and what must be done in the future, and how it shapes probably the attractiveness of inner city development. Thank you very much, Sonja. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this event. I'm very happy to be here. And already inspired by Oliver. And I think actually it's a good topic to continue from that. First of all, my name is Sonja Venho. Used to be called Sonja Heikkila. And as Markus already mentioned, I studied at Aalto University. I was studying transport planning and also urban development. And wrote my master thesis about mobility as a service in 2014, so 10 years ago. And that was the first study or kind of the creation of mobility as a service as a concept. And I made it from the angle of the case study for the city of Helsinki, because I'm based in Finland. I will tell you a bit more about that soon. Then I'll be working in transport planning, also at Business Finland, which is a national funding company where we actually were funding the very first MaaS pilots in Finland. And I also worked at OP Financial Group, which is the biggest financial group in Finland. And there I was leading the mobility services strategy, which was quite interesting that the financial services company wanted to start offering mobility services. So we actually built car sharing, different kind of models and car leasing services to be able to build the whole ecosystem of mobility as a service. I will come to that a bit later. I also worked in Prague at Skoda, also creating new mobility services, so transforming an old established car manufacturer into a mobility service provider. So as we see, the trend of mobility as a service has kind of gone through the whole industry and many industries, as we see here, financials and car industry and many others. And it was regarded as kind of at least one of the visions for future mobility and thus urban planning as well. And today I work at PostNord, which is one of the biggest logistics companies in the Nordics. So we deliver parcels all around the Nordics. And I'm involved in the strategy on how people want to receive parcels and how can we deliver them in the best way. That's a bit similar to mobility, I must say. Yes. So this is me 10 years ago. As I mentioned, it was I wrote the mobility as a service master thesis, and it went public overnight, I could say. So there were hundreds of articles about that as a future vision for mobility in cities. Now it's been 10 years. In the beginning, I'm sure you're quite well aware maybe about different MaaS pilots in countries and how it's regarded. For me, it's kind of a concept, an idea of future mobility. And then there has been a lot of, different kind of initiatives around it, and also companies who have started to offer mobility as a service packages. But I see it's a big change in cities and how we actually think of mobility. So for me, at least, it's much more than one app connecting our mobility modes, but it's about how we integrate everything physically and digitally, so that in the end, the user of the transport can make more decisions on how to move, to give more freedom of mobility. Yes, but let's start here. We all know what is the problem. What do we need MaaS for? We spend, first of all, a lot of time in traffic. That time could be used much more efficiently and pleasantly to something else. Cars are polluting, causing a lot of local emissions. It's not very pleasant to ride a bike or walk next to this road. We are building more roads to cater all these needs. And as we know, the new roads will be filling in with cars again. We had a nice example of Hamburg, the opposite then. If you kind of restrict the space, then people tend not to take so much space. So that's another approach, of course. And yet we know that privately owned cars are only used 5 to 10% of time. So actually we have a lot of space reserved for these cars and a lot of money personally in cars that are used only 5% of the time. You could argue that many things are only used 5% of time, but cars are a big investment and taking a lot of public space. So I think it's quite important to think of that aspect. Still, we know that cars are quite convenient. It's quite hard to argue that some other mode of transport could give the same, the freedom of choosing where to go, when to go. It's flexible. With timing, you can carry a lot of things with you. That's kind of personal experience. So as Oliver also was saying in the beginning, that we cannot build a car-free city because we need cars. That is a convenient way of traveling. But it's really about how the cars are used and how they are also owned. So I think a very important first step to mobility as a service is actually car as a service or car on demand. So we need to make services that make cars available to people instead of owning them. And this meaning car sharing, taxis, rental cars, some short-term leasing, any other ways of taking use of car when you need it. But the rest of the time, 90% of the time, someone else can be using it. And I think in city planning, we need to make sure to allow mobility as a service that the car services and cars are also kind of taken into consideration, that there is easy parking access between public transport and car-related services, so then we can switch travel mode. So we should not hide cars, but take them, car services, take them as part of the city transport. And then we can move to mobility as a service, which is then, of course, adding all other transport modes to the car as a service ecosystem. So we can add scooters, bikes, public transport, of course, any other mobility needs. And I think this is a perfect mix of different kind of vehicles fulfilling the need of people. Because I think actually we as users of mobility, we're also quite complex. We don't want to use car to every use, or we don't want to take a bus for every use. But actually I do have different kind of needs in mobility, depending on day, depending on weather, depending on what things I'm carrying with today, depending how I feel. So mobility service gives you access to all different mobility or means to move around. And that gives the freedom to kind of express yourself through mobility and not needing to restrict to any one vehicle you own. Yes, but of course, in order to do this, we need to make sure that all these travel modes are easily connected, both physically, you can switch to another one, but also digitally. So there has to be a seamless flow between these travel modes. And this is one way to kind of describe the mobility as a service system. You would have kind of one access to all modes of transport, one account, meaning that we would need to share data on where are the vehicles located, how can you access them, what is the pricing, so you can actually buy them through one account. Or we can even take it to the next level, which is subscription to all mobility. So you could pay, this is an example only, but you could pay X amount of euros per month and then have limitless use for all mobility. So then you're free to choose whatever means you want. And it's very important to have all different travel options physically there in the city, but I think it's quite important also to have them accessible digitally, because we all know we don't want to have, I don't know, 15 different apps for car sharing and bike sharing and scoots and public transport. But in order to make my life easy and actually make me shift between travel modes, it has to be super easy. Mobility is still like a means to go somewhere. It's not that we will put a lot of effort in thinking how we go around, but it should be easy and convenient, both physically and digitally. Maybe you're thinking, if I would have limitless access to travel modes, people would always use taxis or the same mode of transport all the time, but there could be interesting pricing models like dynamic pricing to ensure that vehicles are in the right place at the right time, like we have in city bikes today, that they might be offered at a cheaper price in some place where it's not needed at that time, so the people move them themselves. So it's an ecosystem of vehicles, but also people using them in cities. And I think it opens up quite interesting opportunities. What is then the effect to cities? Well, a bit similar pictures than Oliver had from Hamburg. So this would free up space because of all the cars that are parked there today, parked and driving. So it would reduce the total amount or number of cars, since cars would be used in a shared mode, either as a service, a ride service, or then car sharing. But we would get more public open space for other users. We would have less emissions due to sharing cars, which would also share the cost of the car. So basically, the cars would be replaced sooner as they are driven more, and we can replace them with newer, safer, more environmental friendly cars or electric cars. Because they are also more expensive cars, which are maybe not cannot be afforded for all people, but in a shared service model, they can. And first and foremost, at least for me also, is the freedom of mobility and freedom of choice. That people feel that, as I said, they can kind of express themselves through mobility. They can use the modes that they feel like at that time. And I think that's quite important. Or if you don't have a car, but you have access to a car, you can go see a friend or go do some other activity that you would otherwise not be able to do. Lastly, just a visionary picture of future cities. Yes, I think in the future, I don't know when it will be, but I think we will look back and think it was quite crazy actually to own our own cars or vehicles. I think the future will be shared mobility, like we have in public transport, but in other modes of transport as well. And I think the future will also be that it will be strange to think that we drove the cars ourselves, but maybe before that we own them ourselves. Since car is actually the second biggest investments after your home. So this will also free up maybe money to something else, and that can also help city life flourish in another way. This is how I wanted to introduce MaaS today. I hope it was interesting or inspiring, and I would be happy to have discussion around it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonja. Very interesting. We also ask you if you have any questions, feel free. Raise your hand or speak directly. Otherwise, if not, I would like to ask you something. If I well understand, everything is on your handheld, so every data is accessible to come from door to door. what does it make with the traditional infrastructure, the landmarks like stations, like signing, here's mobility? Normally we act in these perspectives to show also how we move in the city and to orient people. Do you have any idea or expectations about this?
Yes, sure. It's very important to have this kind of travel hubs in between travel modes. I think we are quite well in that, doing in that already. But maybe, as I said, also taking the car services into consideration or offering them good parking spaces. You can leave the car there. But of course, then we need to differentiate the own cars and then the car-related services here. Then, for example, taking care that there is a mobile connection to access the shared cars. Sometimes it has happened that the cars are somewhere underground and the mobile connection is not working. You cannot open the shared car. So these kind of things also need to be considered.
So it looks different probably in the future. But
yeah,
the overall amount of space for mobility is decreasing, increasing, or remains the same but different? What do you expect?
The amount of mobility.
The amount of mobility space in the ratio of built environment and mobility environment.
Yeah, I think there will be more open space due to less parking mainly.
More options. Mm-hmm.
But I do think that we will move the same amount. Of course, we're working from home nowadays and not moving so much around, but I think it's still important for people's emotions to go out and see friends and so on. So I don't believe that we wouldn't move so much in the future. Okay. If we save time from going to work, we will use it somewhere else.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are any other questions, we can directly hand over. You already mentioned the emotions, and Peter is the right person to talk about now the topic of urban emotions. Peter is a research director at KIT on the topic of urban emotions. He's looking at the influence, recognition, and reception of any kind of urban stress coming from mobility. And he will give us an insight to his research approaches and its application. So I think it's mainly about bicycle, but could be also about any kind of other different appearance in the urban environment. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us, and up to you.
Thank you, Markus, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me. And yes, emotions, that's a really good topic. And Sonja said, yeah, what about the emotions? And I am an urban planner, and I want to know where in the city do people feel well or not so well. And this was my first task to get a methodology how to measure stress or emotions into the city. So I hope you see the next slide because Google Meet is sometimes a little bit tricky on my laptop. Markus, is it okay? You see it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, urban planning, we talked about it, and we see nice examples from Hamburg. That is a holistic approach. We have to consider all issues, from people behavior, from traffic issues, from the buildings, laws, and so on and so on. And what we need is to get data together to make a planning decision system. And in very often times there is the lack that you get the technical issues, but you don't get real impression what people's expressions or impressions about the city and perceptions are, and how we deal with that. Sonja also said it is, yes, we have now the opportunity that we have the mobile users, sensor technology in our smartphones, where all the sensors are inside, from location sensors, temperature sensors, we can do measuring sounds, and so on and so on. And the main task is how to collect these data and how we can make some monitoring hubs between people and the city, that we have an impression of movement of people, of impressions of people. And I will show you some experiments, what we have a kind of solution for that. Where get the inspiration for our work? There was perhaps some people know a Berlin-based company called Art & Com, and they developed in the early 90s a system called TerraVision. And if you look a little bit closer to that, it looks a little bit like Google Earth, and it was the inspiration for Google Earth. And it was a little bit too early in the development because the bandwidth of internet was too slow in these times, and to transfer all the data to the users was a little bit tricky. But as an exhibition concept, it was very, very nice. So you have the God view from above, and you see all the planning issues in a three-dimensional area. The colleagues from the MIT Sensible City Lab did a very fantastic job to collect all the data from different sensors in the city, and I can show you some examples here in the next in the small video here. They try to see how we can interact with the city in real time with the sensors and what's happening around of us. For example, where are the people located with identification of cell IDs from the cell phones? You see the density of people in the city is very interesting. Or how many energy is consuming during heat periods in the city, because you see on the daytimes when it's hot, people see a little bit more about where the consumption. During special events, you see where the people are located or where they're in the movement of doing some social media stuff. Where are the taxis located during rain times, because you want to go home not wet but more dry. And these are very, very good examples what we can see, what we can do with sensors in the city. Where can I get the data? That is the main question. And you see, I talked that everybody has a sensor on board because of the smartphone. You see inauguration of Bill Clinton. This was very dark in the audience, and 15 years or 17 years later, and during Obama, everybody has one of these smartphones and took pictures. And you see all, and this is a very old graphic, but we create a lot of data during all this time when we are in the city. But my idea, or not my idea is, but the idea is to translate these tables, these tons of tables, big data, into an image that planners and also citizens can understand what happened in the city, which flows are in the city, and why people feel like that, or people see where are some spatial phenomena. We tried it with some population data to see where are, in which area, for example, are the best agers or the seniors located, and these are the areas in the city where we have to look for the infrastructure and how we can adopt it and what's happened during a change in the next years. A colleague of mine from London did it in another way. He analyze Twitter data and where the people are located during tweeting during a day, and you see how the city is awaking at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the people come from outside San Francisco to the inner area, and you see the density. And now that is a good pattern where you see, okay, this concentration is a little bit more like that on this space, and you see where the people are located, and which is very interesting. After ending of a working time, Twittering is starting once again, and the people start to get back at home, and it's very crowded in the outside of the buildings. And after 11 o'clock, the city fell asleep a little bit more. So urban patterns for planning from data from cell phone or smartphone data are very, very good, but we have to think about what can we do with this data, and why we can provide it and who can provide this data, because we want to know a little bit about how people feel in the city. So this is the first thing where we can get the data, but now I want to talk a little bit about how I can measure feelings from people. And there are biosensors like fitness watches, you know it, and there's a quantified self movement. But our inspiration was in former times a little bit more like that. We have a very famous football soccer trainer in Germany, Felix Magath. He is very well known for his red hat because he's very angry during the games. And a large sport journal measured him during a very important match with a heart rate, and you see it in different situations. Okay, with a 99 pulse or 103 pulse, you see there is a reaction on a special situation on the game field. But this is not so good to have an impression how we can measure stress. So we looked a little bit around, and there was a project called Biomapping. It was an art project by Christian Noll. This is an artist from London, also an urban planner, interesting wise. And he first combined a so-called GSR, galvanic skin response sensor, with geoposition of GPS sensors. So galvanic skin response is a little bit more the indication, like in a lie detector. You can measure the sweat or the galvanic skin response of your skin, and also skin temperature, and you see you get some reactions because of a kind of trigger in the city. And if you collect these data and combine it and make some density maps, you get areas of high arousal and low arousal. And this is very interesting to say, or for me as an urban planner, you can measure reactions from people, and you see if you combine this data, there is an area, a hotspot or a low spot, and perhaps we have to look a little bit further what's happened there. And so we founded the Urban Emotion Initiative, where we want to analyze social media data, data from sensors, wearable sensors, and also the opportunities of doing all this stuff in virtual reality to get more an impression how people feel in the city. What we can measure: fear, happiness, sadness, anger, disgust in theory, but unfortunately measuring happiness is much more complicated than measuring some bad issues. And we started with a so-called startled pink eye test. You get the reactions from your pupil, from your eyes, and if it's get the contraction of the muscles there, you see you have an impression of stress. And we do it with a pairing of pictures, like here in Detroit from Google Street View, and said to the people, hey, imagine if you are a tourist coming here, how do you feel? And how do you feel if you see this picture? It was 10 years later. You know, perhaps Detroit is a very special city of randomness, but it works very well, but only in a laboratory situation. And then we found a developer. He created the so-called SmartBand, and SmartBand is collecting galvanic skin response and skin temperature, and though we can combine it with camera and GPS logger, and then we can see the first impressions of the first measurements, that you see, okay, people getting in stress when they come too close to a tram, or they relax a little bit if there is people playing music, but also if they got in pressure of time, they are very, very stressed. So, okay, this works, and we tried it in some other surroundings, like on a hiking in the Palatinian Wood, and you see one of our students is going to the wood, and now, which is very interesting, she's getting lost, and she's now completely in stress. Here's a small tower, so she knows, yes, I'm on my right way back, and this was very fantastic for us as researchers to see the methodology works. For the student, it was after 10 years and 15 years, if I met her again, I always talked to her and said, hey, you remember? And she said, yes, don't talk please anymore about that. But it works. So then we because the measurements were in Kaiserslautern these times. We go to the soccer stadium and see how people feel after leaving the stadium in a crowded area. When you see every time the small boy here getting a red hat, there was a stress situation going back to the city, and this is very interesting that you see it works during a hike and also during a game situation. It was a very boring match, 1-1 from our home team, but you see also right now we make the goal right now, and after that, and the video is still 1 minute left, you see the game is very boring and nothing else happened. So I can switch this slide once again. So, and then we try to look, does it work also on doing mobility, or if you go on our bicycle? And we did a small experiment on that. And you see there are some people going around and have some stress hotspots, and we compared it with a pedelec, with an electric bicycle, and then we can compare it a little bit more, and that there are stress reductions climbing up the hill, but because coming a little bit faster to this circle, people getting more in stress because they are much more fast. You see it inside. If you compare the situation, what's happened here, a car coming from right, and you see, okay, this was a stressful situation, and on the other hand, on the other side, you see the pavement is quite set, and it's very more like a hill than a normal street, and also that could go to a stress reaction from the riders, or to the riders. Then we tried if it's also work with handicapped people. We compared if there's a blind person or with people with wheelchair into a streets, and also parents with their strollers. Are there any reactions because of the pavements or the environment into the city? So we can talk a little bit more about why happened here in the pedestrian zone these high stress situations because of the orientation. And also doing the vice versa experiment with some of our students, they get some a special suit called agement. So we simulate elder people, so that they are an old person and they have to find around in their well-known environment with the plus of 40 or 60 years, and how they feel in that environment. So future planners should have a little bit an impression what they plan as infrastructure for elder people. So what we do now, from out of these lessons learned, we build up much more sensors, like the open bike sensor. It's an open source sensor system where you can measure the distance between bicycles and cars overtaking. There is free manual where you can buy these components and build up your own open bike sensor. And you see it's the first measurements in the city of Stuttgart, and have here something, an area where a lot of people overtake bicycles very nearby. It's a Stuttgart-Kaltental, and we showed this to the city department, the city planning department, and yes, they reduced some car parking slots there to make the street a little bit wider. And yeah, it's a very good data source to argue for some special issues. If you look a little bit in detail, you see, okay, if you see the overtaking distances and overlaying with some stress measurements, you see where the stress is very high. And also loading it up to an open portal, and you see that you can collect all this data. Then we go to the city of Osnabrück and said, okay, now we are in a very good situation. We can do all this stuff together right now, and let's do some larger measurements with a lot of people that we have capture the whole city. The people get one of these smart bands like here. We're collecting skin temperature and galvanic skin response, and what's happened if the skin conductance is increasing and the skin temperature is decreasing. You know this phenomenon. It's like the cold sweat. You're getting a little bit nervous, and this is a pattern for getting in stress into an urban situation. In the first round, we collect data from our partner Bike Citizens via their own app with the 30,000 recorded tracks, and we get a good impression of where the people in Osnabrück ride their bike in the city. And we have also an impression on the right side where people avoid some special tracks or special routes into the city, because we can compare in the navigation system the proposed route with the in reality driven route. And you see here, this is a avoided route because it's a large road with a lot of cars, and this here is more a small way where other people get it as a bypass. And after that, we combine it with our measurements with a stress detection and have 116 participants during 6 months integrated these measurements in their daily life routine, driving their bike from home to work or something like that, and have 1,500 tracks for that with stress measurements, and detected a lot of stress hotspots into the city. The people who took part in this experiments were average age of 49 years, and we have a very good balance in female and male participants. And what we also do with questionnaires before that, we want to ask a little bit about what they are driving, how they rated themselves as an everyday cyclist and interested cyclist, because these are the most important people who we can engage a little bit to use more the bicycle. And we have also around 7% of these very sporty bicycle riders. And after the collection of these data, we go together with the people from the traffic planning departments and compare these situations, what's happened there. And you see on the right side here, okay, really this is bad infrastructure, and also the bicycle infrastructure is not so bad, the signature is not so good, but this is well known from the city plans and the traffic planners. But now you can argue a little bit more. You have arguments to say, okay, here the people getting in stress, and perhaps you should do something. We have also done some before and afters measurements. It would be very nice to have the opportunity to do it like in Hamburg before one of their rebuilding of Jungfernstieg, to see how people react before on the traffic, and after the rebuilding. It would be very, very nice. We have it here in small with some areas, and it was very, very useful to see that we can reduce a little bit the stressy situation for bicycle riders. And also, we try now to combine it a little bit more to, is there the opportunity to change your riding system from a normal bicycle, for example, to this more, a safe bicycle, if there are some, is this stress reducing, to have another opportunity to make micro-mobility, what we are doing some experiments. And also we want to install at these stress hotspots our new camera system, where we can look a little bit closer, where are the people, which people are there, which traffic type is there, and then we can combine it, or we can do these trajectories in our digital twins to see what's happened there and why the people come from there and move there, and also try it a little bit in our bicycle simulator, if there we can use in virtual reality or redesign some of the streets to reduce stress, not like that, because it's very narrow, and do it also with some events into the city of Stuttgart to see how people react on that. So you see the example of the data. You see very well where the people are where the bicycle riders are going through the streets, and you see also what is very interesting, that sometimes people go over the or over the pedestrian area or something, some illegal stuff, which they shouldn't. And sometimes people disappear, and we be wondering why, and they go to the underground under the street with their bike, because it's not so safe at this situation. And this is very interesting to know. Yeah, what we do next, or what we can discuss in this field of work. Are people, or do people want to be a little bit like these cyborgs to measure all the data, personal data, biostatistical data, to deliver a good data set for a better planning purpose? Yes, we can discuss that with our test persons. A lot of people said, yeah, it is very nice if I get my data and see my own special track, it's very good, and I can give it to you, and it's not a problem. And do we need more sensors, like measuring what doing the bikes? Do we need heart rate? Do we need from the brain some stuff? Do we need more questionnaires? I say yes and no. Yes and no, because a lot of sensors are sometimes not so useful. But yes, as a research point of view, I have to say, yes, we need more sensors, and we do it, for example, now in Würzburg, where we have this very, very good bicycle equipped with LiDAR, for doing laser measurements from the environment, so we can build up the environment after cycling. In the computer for the digital twins, we have noise sensors, we have sensors for the air, and so on and so on. And then we get a little bit more impression where people are stressed in the red areas, or where people are in a calm mode in the blue areas. But this is in the development, and this would be the next steps. For me, it's, yeah, is it in conclusion, or are that more like statements that every planner said, yes, monitoring processes are essential for city planning. That's right. But what we learned is that the online stuff, this digital stuff, does not work without the offline, which means that we have to talk to people, explain to people what we do with the data, that we meet people in reality to make some workshops, and that we can convince them about our results. And Carlo Ratti from the MIT Sensible City Lab said smart cities need smart citizens. It's a little bit catchy, but in my opinion, you have to explain a lot, and people has to be very, very in a good mood to use this technology, and they have to understand that, and they have to integrate it in everyday life. If the concept is easy, you get a lot of stuff. If it's too tricky or too frame oriented, if you have to explain too much, it does not work. Yeah, and for me as a planner, I have to say, I have to understand the mechanism behind the data. Where can I get the data? Where I can deliver the data? But the power over the data, I did not get any. Thank you very much. Here are our partners, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter. It's a very interesting insight to the unknown and unseen normally. I think what's most interesting is what you can conclude out of this for future planning. So I assume that you can measure what is there, but you can't conclude what should be done in order to make it better, probably sometimes. But this is probably one of the challenges of the future.
Yes.
Are there any questions concerning this?
So if there is not any questions, I propose we go to the next intervention as we are running a little bit short on time. Thank you very much, Peter, for this intervention. It was very inspiring, and I hope many cities, especially small and medium-sized cities, can also learn about this data collection, because we have talked a lot about medium and big-sized cities, but I think small cities can also learn a lot. And small city centers would need some planning with this data collection. So thank you very much for these insights. I am now handing the floor to Laura Babío. Laura is a just transition co-coordinator in the Polis network. So for those who don't know, Polis network is a network of European cities and regions that basically work together to develop innovative technologies and policies for local transport. And she will basically explain a little bit what they do and how the potential of mobility in small and medium-sized cities. Laura, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. You can see my screen all right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that presentation, and for the other speakers. I think that the presentations before will help also provide some context for my presentation. So as Mateo just said, I'm Laura, I work for Polis, and I'm going to talk about the potential for mobility as a service in small and medium-sized cities. So just very quickly on what is Polis. We are an association, a network of European cities and regions working for sustainable urban mobility innovation. We do many things, offering a platform work on policy, especially at the EU level, but also research, and we have that focus on innovation. We have more than 100 members all over Europe, not only small and medium-sized cities. We have cities of all regions, of all sizes, and we also have regional and provincial authorities, but we try to represent quite a big part of Europe in our network. And we are a network where we are problem driven. We are trying to support our members, local and regional authorities, addressing the main urban mobility challenges that they're experiencing and achieve their desired policy goals, which are very broadly improved air quality, modal shift towards sustainable mobility, increased safety in our roads, and decarbonization, and everything done under a just transition lens, so making sure that this transition towards climate neutrality doesn't leave anyone behind. But that's just also that was just for a quick introduction, and also to present the lens through which we understand mobility as a service, because for us, and for most, or if not all of our members, mobility as a service can be a tool that can support these policy goals. I think that Sonja did already a good explanation on what it is, but just to mention some of the key benefits, because it doesn't benefit only the citizens, it has the potential for sure to allow citizens and mobility users to better choose and to do it based on their preferences while trying to avoid precisely those ownership costs. It can also be beneficial for cities, which can use such services to nudge, to push users towards sustainable mobility options. And it can also be beneficial for the mobility service providers, which can engage users through a different channel and maybe try to increase how many users they can reach by improving the service they offer. But why are we as Polis working on MaaS? We want to first and foremost ensure that the MaaS discourse, the MaaS debate developments are not entirely business and technology driven. Of course, business and technology are a part of mobility as a service, but we see it dangerous if they take the control and they develop MaaS in a purely commercial way. We also want to make sure that we all understand what is mobility as a service, and that we promote awareness on what it is amongst the city and regional authorities, trying to understand best what's their role in their MaaS environment. We also want to promote integration of new and traditional mobility services with city and regional transport policies to ensure this model shift, to make sure that active modes like walking and cycling are part of the discussion and the development. And of course, we believe that public-private collaboration is essential for MaaS, so we want to encourage the communication and cooperations between new mobility service providers and local and regional governments. The truth is that there are many potential benefits that could be brought by mobility as a service, by having all integrated digitally and accessible to users. As I said, it could be used to promote sustainable travel and push towards giving up the car. It could also improve the efficiency of the existing transport services and public resources, how they are offered, but also more importantly, how they are used. It could provide personalized approach to develop inclusive systems that take into account different user profiles and needs. It could also enhance overall access to transport services and offer choices to users. And then finally, it can also be seen as a tool to boost local economy and tourism, not only by providing a better mobility system, more connected, more integrated, but also by developing these super apps that also incorporate other services like museum tickets or access to hospitality, discounts, etc. So it potentially could be great, but I say potentially because most of these benefits have not been demonstrated, at least not fully. There is still a lot to go, and also their full exploitation will depend on how the mobility as a service is set up and how it's functioning. There is also, to tie it up with what was just discussed, there is also potential impact on the citizens' well-being. By having one integrated app that allows you to plan, to book, it could definitely reduce the stress and improve the convenience of traveling, which is particularly important for tourists being in an unknown area. But not only, to be honest, depends on how complex the system is. It could also give you personalization and choice, allow you to just better find the solution that is more adaptable to you. It could increase social interaction through shared mobility, and that's something that I recently even experienced this weekend, how shared mobility can really help social cohesion. I was just in Morocco last weekend, and it's unbelievable there how the taxis are shared. You can just stop a taxi that has people and get in, and there the taxis are really just a point of encounter where people just talk. And it's my friend that lives there calls it a therapy session for the people that enter and start discussing their life. So it can definitely have positive impacts in this wealth. By including the walking and cycling with other modes, it can also improve health and have other type of well-being benefits. And then if we have a very well-functioning MaaS that provides real-time information and that even allows for the transport providers to adapt their offer dynamically, it can definitely increase the reliability and trust in the system for the user, once again reducing the stress and facilitating a more pleasant travel overall. But here I mentioned the potential impact when MaaS is done right. How is MaaS done right? Well, we don't know. The truth is that there is not a recipe for the perfect MaaS. We don't have such a perfect MaaS existing anywhere. It's true that MaaS is not a one-size-fits-all solution. When we talk about MaaS, sometimes it feels that that's like the concept that it's taken, it can't be applied anywhere. That's not true. We also distinct now between the different levels of MaaS, what you can see on the left. And at least at Polis, we believe that to achieve all of those potential benefits, we need to be on a level 4. That would mean that you have everything integrated, from the services, the booking, the payment, but also even policy, so that there is, in the way that the services are presented and that the tool works, there is already an integration of societal goals, for instance, with incorporating a routing that nudges towards walking and cycling, as an example. So it will depend, those benefits, on where we are. So far, there is not any MaaS that has make it to level 4 and that is still currently running. If anyone knows one, please let us know, because we are always interested. There is a big majority of MaaS are still at level 1, which is also the MaaS that can be the more one-fit-size-all, the journey planner. And then little by little, we see level 2 and level 3, which depends on factors like how the transport is organized in an area, who has the competence over it, how open, how digitally advanced. There are many factors that will influence in which level. And there is also trends overall in the mobility world that also affect MaaS. Shared mobility is a very volatile market, it's changing a lot. So obviously this affects MaaS offers. We see even within the different MaaS models, from one model completely led by a public authority, like a transport authority or a city, to a model completely led by a private company, to in-between models, to models that work with companies. There are many, and we see the trends are changing over the years. There are many challenges to why, there are many reasons, or what we can see many reasons why we haven't reached the level 4, lack of demand for MaaS, lack of integration, but there are also specific challenges for small and medium-sized cities when putting MaaS on the table. To start with, usually smaller cities have a smaller public transport network that can serve as the backbone, or sometimes they have limited competence over how the public transport is provided. We know, for instance, here in Belgium, in Flanders, the buses is organized at the regional level, so the city doesn't really have power to organize them or to make sure that they are integrated in a service. There is also usually in the smaller cities less new mobility services, less shared mobility. There is a lower pool of users that also makes it a bit less attractive for the private providers to deploy system. There is also sometimes lower digital infrastructure readiness, and that limits the enable of the MaaS ecosystem. And also, obviously, depending on the demographics, but we know that in cities we have more tech-savvy demographics of people, and people that maybe could more easily jump into innovation, into using an app to move around, whereas we know that in smaller cities there is a bit more resistant to change sometimes, and there is a slower adoption by potential users. Obviously, all of these challenges are not presented in all small and medium-sized cities. Particularly in Europe, we have a great diversity, and but these are some of the key challenges that we know we have seen in overall in smaller cities. There is a solution. There are solutions for everything. There is a lot of work to do, but we can provide a few recommendations from what we have learned from our members. The most important one is the work on developing the MaaS ecosystem. From what we have learned, we think that this should have some sort of public oversight to make sure that we have that integration with the policy goals. That doesn't mean that the MaaS has to be owned by a public authority, but that a public authority establishes, for instance, the governance mechanisms or ordinances to make sure that there is a level playing field. And also important that the public side works on investing also in digital infrastructure. We cannot lift everything to the private market, but we should forge new public-private partnerships and look at different business models and subsidies that can really help with the settlement of MaaS. There should be flexible mobility options like demand-responsive transport, ride-sharing, micromobility, shared mobility, but it's important that there is, if we want to offer choice, there needs to be options. There needs to be the possibility to make such a choice. And this applies to everything, not MaaS, but it's important to start with pilot projects, gather feedback, see how things go, demonstrate success to encourage wider adoption, and then grow in the process little by little, not put all the eggs in a golden basket. And then finally, to try to mitigate the adoption, there is important always to run education, marketing campaigns, and to try to offer incentives that can promote sustainable mobility and overall the MaaS use. There is specific opportunities also for the small and medium-sized cities. First, MaaS for tourism. So imagine specific apps that dedicated for the occasional visitors or foreigners. This is a great use case. It has been questioned before if there is a demand for MaaS. For most people living in a city already know their mobility options, and they have made a choice and they know how to move. But there is a bigger demand for such an app that would facilitate this for tourists, which come to an area and they are unfamiliar with it. They don't know how the system works, how the ticket, the fare. So there is a lot of potential there for MaaS. And then for the smaller cities, there is also the what we see now also popping more and more is the regional MaaS. So having it instead of at the city level, at the regional level, which can also support the regional connectivity. We know that there is a lot of movement at the functional urban area, people commuting inside and outside city. A regional approach could better tackle such movements. It would also allow to reduce a bit the cost, the financial burden, to share investment in the infrastructure on the different digital elements needed for development of MaaS. It can also facilitate the public transport integration when, in the case I mentioned before in Flanders, when this is organized at the regional level. And since we are offering a larger user market, it can also attract more private sector investment. And then finally, establishing a regional governance authority could also help the decision making than leaving it all at small cities different small cities in one region. So there is a lot of opportunities for small and medium-sized cities, and we see many of these regional MaaS examples now popping up. And just my last slide. I hope I didn't take too much time. And you saw many of these insights in Square over the presentation. If you want more recommendations and to get into specific details from us, we just published a report with Arthur D. Little last year on the future of mobility, where we talk a bit more about what is needed for enabling MaaS, for framing MaaS. So I think that there you can find also some interesting insights. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, for your intervention. It was very interesting to know that there is such a network and all the work you do. Is there any questions on this last intervention? And if there is not any questions, I will now lend the floor to Lauryne Pignarre. Lauryne is the national contact point for URBACT here in France. And yeah, she will do a little presentation about a call for projects that they are launching. So yeah, you have 5 minutes to explain a little bit what you want to explain, and then you will explain a little 2 small initiatives, good practices that URBACT has identified.
Yes. Thank you, Matteo. Hi, everyone. I hope you see my screen.
Yes, it's perfect.
Yes, it's okay? Okay. So I'm gonna try to be very quick. So I'm the French national contact point for URBACT. I'm here today to present you the call for project and good practices of this call, especially example from Spain and Italy. To get started, I'm going to present quickly URBACT. URBACT is a European territorial cooperation program co-financed by the European Regional Development Fund. Its main goal is to support all cities and urban authorities in their urban development. It has 3 areas of activities. So first, networking. The heart of the program is really to cooperate and exchange between cities from all over Europe on urban development within thematic networks. Second, there is the capacity building activity. So the program helps cities building the skills of local stakeholders in the design and implementation of public policies on urban policies. And finally, there is the communication and sharing knowledge. The program shares a lot of success stories and policy recommendation, spreading its method and tools. When we say network in the URBACT program, we talk about a group of cities from the EU and some partners, other country partners, which is composed between 8 to 10 partners with the city as a lead partner and an expert offered by the program. The URBACT is a bit unique as a European program because it doesn't fund investment in project, but it gives time to reflect and on the conception of public policies, thanks to its method. As you can see, it's an integrated approach, participative approach as well, involving all stakeholders, citizens, and all the dimensions of sustainable development, thanks to transnational exchanges and network experts and tools. Today, I want to present to you especially one network, which is the transfer networks. So the goal of this network is to enable city to share a good practice that is successful in their countries and to transfer them to other cities that are interested. A good practice, when we say good practice, it's something that is integrated, participative, impactful, and transferable. So the goal is to understand the solution, to adapt it, and to reuse it in its own local context. Today, there are already 115 good practices that has been labeled. You can have access on the database on the website because the call of Transfer Network will be open from April to June. So had a small animation, but I think we don't have time. But the database is available, and there are a lot of topics related to urban development regarding climate action, local economy, urban planning, and many are related to city centers. In order to discover all these practices, the program organized its annual event in Poland from 8 to 10 April. So if you want to participate, you can still register. And all the cities which have been labeled as a good practice will be present to start to construct partnerships. But in order to be more concrete, I wanted to present you one good practice from Spain on the topic of today. So it's a project in Zaragoza in Spain. It's called the STAR project, which is transforming school routes into safe, cyclist-friendly routes. This project is a program for sustainable, active, and autonomous mobility aimed at primary and secondary school students, which involve all the educational community and focus on the use of bicycle as a regular means of transport. And these projects enable many alliances between local, regional, and state administration, which work together to promote cycling and sustainable neighborhood through redeveloped spaces and collaborative initiatives. Throughout 11 years of project, 62 educational centers have participated, and it includes today 31 centers and reaching 12,000 students. So it enables the autonomy of children to go to school, the creation of stable network of teachers, and the involvement of students. So it's really a participative approach that URBACT wants to promote. So this is the first practice from Spain. And to finish, there is another one from Italy that can interest you because it's a practice that Faenza, the city in Italy, did. So the city rewards people living in the suburbs who get around by bikes bike thanks to the Bike to Work application, which is an application which pays participants according to the distance traveled. So this application and initiative is co-financed by the city, the region, and some companies. And it made a great difference because a lot of people took bikes to go to their jobs, and even some local companies have integrated the app into their sustainability programs and use their own funding to promote sustainable mobility among their employees. So through a partnership approach as well, there were productive collaboration between all stakeholders involved, so the companies, the school, the local administration, enabling new mobility solution and new urban mobility in the city. So that's it for me. I hope it was clear. And if you have any question, I'm available, especially for the French cities, if you want, as I'm the national contact point for France and Luxembourg, but every country has a contact point if you want to reach to them. And I'm available for question if you want to know more. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauryne, for your intervention. We are arriving to the end of the webinar. Thank you all for participating to this webinar. I don't know if you want to say something, Markus, or closure.
Yeah, thanks to all the participants, to the presenters. I think it's important to say that we have another session in springtime, which we will announce by all the contributors, by all the participants and the list we have so far. So happy to see you there again. Then we probably have a more closer look again to best practice in Europe and trying to expand the network to the wider overview of all Europe. So see you then, and probably there's a last one which is in autumn, but this is something you will announce then later on. With you. Matteo.
Exactly. So thank you all for participating. We are organizing in Paris on November 6th and 7th our third European Forum of City Centers. So we are already announcing that. So don't forget to save this date if you want to come to Paris. We will actually address all the thematics that we have addressed in the 2 years of the observatory. So yeah, you will receive, of course, some information about the next webinars of this observatory and also about this event. So thank you very much, and have a lovely day today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone.